All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives, and tonight we are having one of our Thursday trio nights with the traditional trio. George is running a little bit late. He had to do something on a short notice basis, and he'll be back with us very shortly this evening. However, and I apologize for the delay, but well, anyway, I apologize. So, Professor Darrell
Yes,
Hamamoto,
sir.
you and me together, we can start off together, and that's a really cool thing. I find I want to have more time with you, Professor. We should do another one of our duet shows sometime.
I think so. Yeah, I like playing the chords and then you taking the lead lines. And I'm really interested in learning more. I mean, you're a trained opera singer and you've been on the stage. So when it comes from you saying that, hey, I like 432 hertz, all right, that holds a lot of credibility in my book as opposed to someone on YouTube who's saying that. So perhaps we can talk about music and frequencies. I think you wanted to delve into some more of the esoteric issues, right?
Well, I don't know. I love the sound that 432 gives. I can't explain it except for that it just seems so much more musical. It sounds more natural. But it is a matter of a question of whether you're writing music for the human voice or not. Because if you're writing for the voice, then 432 is the way to go. I love it. I think everybody would agree that it's resonant. And 440 is just a little bit higher, like almost not quite half of a note, but enough to make it a different experience on the vocal cords. And so you, as a singer, one of the things that you find that you develop is called muscle memory. And this is what we try to do to encourage ourselves to get a muscle memory of a passage. And if you have something that's difficult to sing, well, you practice it in different ways. But what you're doing there is implanting in the muscle themselves the memory of where to form that particular note. And if you move that note a little bit higher, then the muscles have to work a little bit differently, or muscles that haven't been working or suddenly have to work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not as fun. I would really like it if we would go back to 432 for everything. And I it may be that change to 440 was part of the whole what is it called, subversion program, the idea of making us all feel that nothing really works anymore. Nothing makes me happy. I was thinking of Joni Mitchell's song today. They paved paradise and put in a parking lot. They took all the trees and put them in a tree museum and charged all the people $1.50 just to see them. Those were the lyrics, that we don't always seem to go. You don't know what you got till it's gone. Well, are those lyrics not the same kind of idea that things are going to go bad? Lucy's going to pull the football again. Every time Charlie Brown wants to go running at the football, she will duly tell him she'll hold it, and she will look like she's going to hold it, and she'll smile at him, and he comes running up, and she pulls it away again. Charlie Brown, rats. Remember what he always used to say, rats. and that's the result of our efforts, whether it's to get back to 432 music, or whether it's to understand what's really going on in the world. We're going to be frustrated. We're going to be pounding sand. We're going to say, God, who really killed JFK? And we'll never know, because they set it up that way so that, boom, you're never going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Joni Mitchell had an incredible talent and incredible voice. And I don't know if she was one of those ones that had the special treatment at the Laurel Canyon with the guys or not, but what a tremendous song. But I don't know. I mean, so many of these rock and roll songs, they seem to have a message that's, when you really listen to it, it's kind of depressing.
Well, she did compose, even though Crosby, Stills, and Nash got credit for it, and they had the big hit from it. She is the composer of Woodstock, and her
Mhm.
line is, "We got to get back to the garden."
Yes.
And we were just speaking of frequencies and tunings. Is not Joni Mitchell the master of alternate tunings?
Hmm.
Explain. You're a guitarist.
No, incredible. Yeah. I can't explain her guitar playing. I never could. You can get charts, they'll show you the chord pattern, say this, the string that's usually this, well, instead of a D, now it's going to be an E, and this one over here was a A, but now it's going to be a B. And, she had an incredible way of using open tunings and cross tunings. I should say open tunings, not cross tunings. But
Mhm.
yeah, and inventive and everything. But the freedom of her voice was just, I mean, her voice it just goes directly into you. It doesn't get. It's just one of the most clear and beautiful voices that we have. And I understand from the chat room she needs some prayer. She's not doing too good. So prayer for
That's right.
Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, she's been suffering. I don't know if it's Alzheimer's or, I don't want to get it wrong, but she is debilitated at the moment in the same way. I think that another great singer, she's not a songwriter, but she's a great interpreter, especially of the American songbook, Northern Mexican folk music and rock and roll. And that's Linda Ronstadt,
Oh yeah,
right? I think she's also having some neurological problems. And John,
I think it's Parkinson's in her too.
Parkinson's. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, John, if there's some sort of generational turnover that's beginning to take place here amongst our artists and intellectuals.
Well, we
Parkinson's.
are getting older.
Yeah, I don't remember the old folks like my grandparents ever being plagued by. I mean, they were pretty lucid until the very end. Their bodies broke down, but they remained sharp up until the very end, from what I can. And same with my dad, who died at age 94. He was still a sharp cookie.
Hmm.
He did not slip into senescence. So maybe this is acclimating us to this new regime of just older age senescence. And it also allows the Greta Thunbergs to say, yeah, I mean, the boomer, make way for us. We're the new wave. You can't even keep it together mentally anymore.
Well, we can't if you poison our water and our food. It's kind of hard.
Yeah.
We're not used to GMOs. Our brains never had. Humankind never ate GMOs before,
Mhm.
and we don't know what happens with them. But we do know that there are a lot of evil schemes out there to take away our health.
Well,
And that's one of the hardest sells to people is to say, hey, you know what? Just because they say that they're the health system, doesn't mean that they're on our side. That's that thing that I ran into a few years ago, and I started recognizing it. It's the difference between the health that we grew up thinking of, and that is that you are entitled to be healthy, and if you're not healthy, you go to the doctor, and the doctor works with you and makes sure that you're healthy. And only if you have some really specialized thing that you have to go to a specialist because you had a doctor that took care of you. Now they've changed it to more of a corporate style, like everything else. But I don't have a MD anymore. I've got a one of those nurse practitioners, and they, he's good. I mean, I like him all right. But what they're doing now is they're saying that health is measured not by individuals, but by the global population, by the big number. Do we have a
mhm,
healthy population in this country? And
mhm.
and and there is where eugenics starts to come in, because you get all these old people in nursing homes, and they're not contributing anything to society. As a matter of fact, they're costing us $3, 4, $5,000 a month. And they're useless eaters. I mean, face it, they're useless eaters. Sure, they're somebody's grandparents. So what? You know, um, grandparents don't last forever.
Mhm.
And the Bible says 70, and these guys are like already past 70. They're like 80. They're like, my God, they're getting into the, they're, and the only people that are really allowed to live to 100 or so seem to be the elites anymore. And it's true. I mean, the rural life was maybe a very hard life. And I know in rural Ireland, it was a very difficult life, working all the time just to get enough to eat. But they lived long lives. That they lived into the late 80s. They lived into the 90s. And these, I think they're trying to convince us that we're only entitled to 70. That's what I think.
Well, life is short, and there are a lot of experts out there trying to make it even shorter. And now it's so open. It's right there. We're going to attack these homes. The Governor Cuomo. I mean, the agenda is all out there now. And the question is, what can we do, or what are we going to do in response? Because the entire population has to be protected, young and old. And more recently, we've seen there's been a concerted attack. I mean, we knew this, but now it's open. There's a concerted attack on female fertility, right?
Mm.
That it has all these earmarks of a ritual, a blood ritual, in the same way that male fertility has been. The information's out there about the drops in sperm count and global fertility because of the GMOs and the platelets or whatever it is they're putting in BHB in our foods, not just our packaging. So we see that, right? And we understand it. How much more do we need to understand before we are able to stop the process and reverse it? That's where I'm at right now, because I think I've learned enough now to understand what the problem is. Now I'm trying to figure on solutions, and to do that, I spent the hour of my show today talking about the filmmaker Stanley Kramer. Do you remember him? Judgment in Nuremberg and High Noon and those great films that we grew up with in the 60s.
I didn't know him by name, but I remember the movies, sure.
Yeah. So I'm trying to reintroduce the American public to this culture that we once took for granted, because everything we see on net, not everything, but a lot of everything we see is post-human, and it just fills the human being with nothing but self-disgust and loathing, self-loathing. And I realize we can't set back the clock back to the time of Stanley Kramer, but even without him, even without people seeing his movies and having forgotten his name and his legacy, I think from the people I talked to, those values that Stanley Kramer was putting out there, true liberalism, those values that Stanley Kramer and his movies reflected are still very much with us in 2021. That's the majority sentiment. So how can a population that embraces those liberal values with a small L, such as reflected in these films, how can we have fallen prey to such a tiny minority of technocrats?
Yeah. I was talking to Paul Gallagher, who's the economist. He'll be with me tomorrow night. He's going to explain to us how we can fix our financial system, and it's a huge mess. But what I think we need to keep in mind is that what they're doing is pretty much the same thing that the Roman Empire did, and the model for it is European socialism. Okay, think of the good side of European socialism. What does it do for you? Well, it gives you transportation. They've got great trains and inner city transit and ways to get around. It gives you medical care, generally for free. At least that's what they say, and it gives you a way of life. You're not going to make any money. You're not. That's the downside, is that you're never going to get rich in that socialist thing. But On the other hand, as Klaus Schwab says, you won't own anything, but you'll be happy. You'll be happy. That's what they want you to believe. So this is the seduction. Okay. Is that, look, I mean, you got a good life here, and I mean, compared to the rest of the world, America, you got it made, man. You should be happy. Just kick back and be happy, um, and enjoy your life. Think of new ways to be hedonistic. Consider the pleasure that you can take while you're sitting here with your, 70, and make sure and enjoy yourself while you're here. We hope you enjoy your ride, and thanks for visiting planet Earth. We'll see you when you come back through the next cycle of the Tree of Life. You'll be down there creating hummus for a while, and then you'll make your way up through the roots, and one day you'll get out on the branches and turn into a bird, and then you'll be, one day you'll make it back into humanity. But we hope you enjoyed your trip. That idea is the same thing as the bread and circuses idea of ancient Rome. This is what I think we can use to explain it. Ancient Rome sustained itself on war and conquest. If they stopped expanding, that's when they started falling apart. So they kept on taking and taking and taking. How did they do it? Well, they had the essential Roman population doing all the work and getting by on free bread and entertainment, circuses, football games, entertainment, watch television, same thing. So we're induced to do the work for the empire. Our reward is we get a certain amount of basic food, and we get to live for a certain amount of time. And as long as we, obey the rules and don't do crazy things like complain, and you'll be happy. You'll be happy as long as you don't have to go out there and fight those barbarians yourself. And then as long as we keep praising the empire and all the great leadership that we have, we can sit back and enjoy those 70 years. Crack a Frosty, watch the football game, and enjoy your life. Don't get all involved in politics and all this stuff. It's really not necessary. There are people way above my pay grade. And that business of, that's above my pay grade. What a great excuse that is. It's kind of like saying, you know what? I don't even want to talk about that because I signed a non-disclosure agreement. And so I don't want to screw up my pension. So why don't we just say that it's above my pay grade and I can't talk about it because, I just can't. Well, anyway, that's my excuse. George Webb, thank you for joining us. I know you had to run out and do an important errand, and we're glad you're back. Looks like you're in a beautiful site there. We've got some beautiful blue light behind you. It looks terrific. How are you?
I'm great, John. Thank you, and Dr. Hamamoto. Good evening, and I've been listening to your show, and you guys are always so thoughtful, and we are kind of in this milieu where we've been thrown into this abyss, sort of. And we are trying to figure things out, and it's causing us, in a healthy way, I think, to go through this reevaluation of what is important in life, what are the values we think we have. You talked about Stanley Kramer and the judgment in Nuremberg, and these are all things that are going to come up that we're going to talk about in our charrette out in California. And we definitely want to rediscover, like Dr. Hamamoto said, these things we hold dear, and try to recreate that art in our own way, in our own form, and our own facts that we've uncovered. And I always try to think about this as sort of a metamorphosis. Somehow we're going to change out of this and become better. This Schwabian thing that's hit us. We either can die, which that's not an option, or quit, and that's not an option, or we can just somehow metamorphosize to something better. And that's what I get out of your guys' talk tonight. And it's very inspiring. And I think we can do it. I think Dr. Hamamoto always makes a great point. which is do it with artwork, do it with writing, do it with the creative arts. John, you're certainly always that way with your music. So this is sort of like I don't know. I guess I'd call it Schwabian metamorphosis if I was writing an opera.
Mhm. And there should be an opera written about a Schwab-like figure. George, not to break the rhythm here, but I did get your most recent book just this afternoon. For people who don't know it, it's dropped. It's available on Amazon. Sybil, if you can't read it, Sybil wears no yellow badge, and this is your account of your meeting, a very productive meeting with Sybil Edmonds, who's well, she needs no introduction to this group, so I won't belabor the point. This book is even better. I didn't even get to finish it before the show here because this just arrived this afternoon. But and this is dropped. It's called The Ghost in the DNC Machine, and it's specifically about the Seth Rich disappearance. We can't call it a murder now, but he's just kind of seems to have vanished off the face of the earth, unless somebody who's part of the Osprey Nation worldwide can ID him. Let's put out an APB on Seth Rich or someone like him. But George, there is one passage, it's just sort of in passing, a passage in your most recent book here on Seth Rich that I found really intriguing because I've been researching the strange circumstances surrounding the death of one Anthony Bourdain. And I'm reading the follow-up to his great bestseller, New York bestseller, Kitchen Confidential. This is the follow-up to it. And you mentioned that Seth Rich went to Indonesia embedded in one of the crews of Anthony Bourdain as a cover for his transactions on behalf of Warren Buffett. Is that an accurate characterization?
Yes, yes. And this is near the focal cop where John's talking about, but people don't understand that Seth Rich, and I didn't understand this either. And when I met John, I was on the trail of Seth Rich, walking his last steps, thinking he was this hero, but he's actually an oil and gas guy for Warren Buffett. It has been for decades, his whole working life. That's why I put him, with Warren Buffett making the, little human dreidel, and Seth's peeking under one arm of Warren Buffett and Aaron's peeking under the other arm, 10 years ago. And just as an aside, this thing comes up with a potential relationship. Now, remember, I'm a big Obama fan, and both John and I had voted for Obama. At that time, I think we both believed the whole story, the CIA mother and the whole drug trafficking and the total compromise. It was just a bridge too far for me. I believed it. I was sucked in by it. So when this guy's telling me, oh, by the way, Anthony Bourdain had a relationship with Obama, I mean, I put that right in with Dr. Corsi saying he was born in Kenya, but it was an aside. And I put it in the book just because if it ever did come to light, it would be a credibility builder for me. There's no reason that I would just lash out at Obama. And I bristled in the meeting when the person said that, when the Deep Blackberry guy said that. Oh, and I think maybe Obama had a tete-a-tete with Anthony Bourdain in Indonesia. I was like, hey, whoa, come on. That's uncalled for. And, but there you go. I mean, I put it in the book just because if it does come to light, people will go, well, I do remember George saying that. It's unbelievable as it sounds, but that came right from the DNC guy.
So that particular connection between Obama, Seth Rich, and Anthony Bourdain came from Deep Blackberry?
Yes.
That's your source?
Yeah.
Okay, because
the guy was,
based on what I'm reading about Anthony Bourdain, that's a very promising lead, given his career. And you know how he died, right, John? I don't know if you're a foodie or ever watched his shows, where he goes all over the world and samples the gustatory delights of all the different exotic cultures.
I've seen, I saw snatches of it, and then when he died, I saw some clips of what he did, and but honestly, when he died, I was so I don't know, disillusioned with everything. I didn't really latch onto that story at all. I thought, oh well, probably somebody killed him for some reason, and they said it was a suicide, but I don't know the particulars.
Well, supposedly, this is what I heard. It was death by self-strangulation, possibly autoerotic asphyxiation,
Oh yeah.
which seems to be a common MO for people that they want to humiliate ritualistically, and also to avoid people looking into it because it's such an unseemly crime. Who wants to check into that, whether it's Anthony Bourdain or Carradine, right? Is it John? Not John Carradine, but his son.
Keith Carradine, yeah.
Is it Keith Carradine or the guy that played Kung Fu, right?
Keith
Who was in Thailand, I believe, as well when his body was found. I thought it was really curious that Anthony Bourdain, he fits the profile of a lot of people that you've talked about in your close to 5-year quest, George, and that these are people who seem to be aimless. He admits he was a heroin addict. He comes from a respectable middle class family, alcoholic and heavy dope smoker. I mean, he had all the earmarks of being a loser and a failure. But all of a sudden, at age 43, this book, Kitchen Confidential, drops, becomes an instantaneous New York Times bestseller, and he becomes a cultural figure, a cultural hero. And then once he begins to figure it out, like somewhat out of a J.D. Salinger autobiographical novel, it's kind of like an Irish Chang story. Once you found out that you've been inducted to something you didn't know you were signing up for, then he dies of autoerotic asphyxiation. I think he's a very strong element in this story here that needs to be followed up. And then, of course, it brings in my interest. It ties in the interest in the Asian part of the equation, the Indonesian, the drug, the Golden Triangle, Pakistan. And speaking of which, and I'll shut up so you can comment.
Oh, no.
You also earlier today alluded to a family that I've been tracking and working them up for years, and their name is Patel.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You've heard of the Patel Motel cartel?
Sure. Yeah, I saw your email to me.
All right. Those are the people that run privately owned and now corporate hospitality. And you have talked about trucking and all these sort of mundane types of business activities, rental car agencies, used car agencies. I mean, hospitality is perfectly positioned to be the glue for this larger network. Housing, transportation, analysis, data, tracking and tracing. Patel? Yeah, I think that's a bloodline that needs to be studied. I've looked at them a little bit. They usually can get family members in on extended family visas, and they also get preference if they're putting X amount of dollars into the economy. So they go to the front of the line. But they're perfectly positioned to run these intelligence operations. So for researchers out there, do your searches on Patel, Patel.
Well, just to your comment, if you're running an infiltration network and you want to make sure, this is the Imran Awan thing, where you don't want any of your people that are coming into the country to show any footprints. You don't want them to show any receipts from any hotels, no rental cars, never buying gasoline, never renting a house, never having a cable bill or an electrical bill. You need a network. And a lot of times you can do it through these reward networks now. So if you give people chits, if you will, for free night stay, a free car rental, etc., they could come into the country, go out to Lawrence Livermore Labs, do their 6 weeks, get all their thumb drives, whatever they need to hand off at the Wrigley Building in Chicago, and leave the country and never make a footprint. And so the Patel network I had looked at, this goes back with task force, as a part of that no footprints kind of strategy, but I haven't looked into it much. And I really had a little bit of a tussle mentally putting that passage in there because it was something that was just mentioned offhandedly that I could have left out and saved myself trouble because you know what I mean? Because people are going to go, oh, come on, that never happened. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just put it in there because when it does come out, everyone will go, oh my God, he was telling the truth. And I would rather have that, take the heat now for putting it in for the reward later on. And this happens over and over again. If you just put it in there, I mean, you're going to find out that somebody did drive Seth Rich to the airport that night, and it was going to be Donna Brazil. And when that happens, people are going to go, oh my God, Webb was right about that because he got the inside thing. He told me, same guy, told me that Imran Awan came in through a company called Inter America. I didn't know what Inter America was. I had no idea how Imran got in the country. 10 months later or 6 months later, Luke Rosiak is in front of Jim Jordan. And what do they say? Well, he came in through a company called Inter America. It's the first time that it ever had been made public. I had inside knowledge from Deep Blackberry. So I knew he knew what was going on. So I'm putting it out there. Donna Brazil was there that night at the MedStar Hospital. Why are there no footprints? I talked about this with John 4 years ago when I met him. No autopsy, no death certificate, no pictures of, no admissions records of him going into the hospital, no camera of him walking 50 minutes down Georgia Avenue in the middle of DC, the most busy bisecting thing in DC. No witnesses at that time of night. The cops didn't even go and ask for witnesses when they went door to door where the shooting went off. The shooting monitors were an hour before that. Okay. All sorts of things where inconsistencies with the witnesses. I went to Joe's Bar and Grill for 5 days in a row. I talked to Joe Capone 3 days in a row. I went to Wonderland where he's supposed to work. I mean, I really did all the footwork, for this story. And
including walking through the hood at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Many times.
I know, multiple times, and living to tell about it.
I went to Howard Hospital. I went to MedStar. I went and talked to all these people, the nurses. I tried to talk to the doctors. No records whatsoever. There's no metadata to support the death of Seth Rich. So people say, well, that's a conspiracy theory. And I'm saying, no, you have the conspiracy theory that he's dead. You show me some evidence that he's dead, right? I have a witness who has inside information that says he's still alive, and he got on a plane and he took off to Indonesia. And, I didn't know how to deal with this. I took pictures of the Indonesian flag and hinted that he was in Indonesia because he was working on a project there, but they were done with, there was a big project coming up with a Chinese Russia energy deal. We now know that's Belt and Road. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the information is now kind of fitting that, yes, these oil interests that were the same people that were doing pipelines, Dominion Energy, which is Warren Buffett's pipeline company in the United States, was also involved in Belt and Road. It would be natural for Seth Rich to move in between the two, take the experience from one and go on to the next. And I still believe he's in Hong Kong right now.
Oh, in Hong Kong, okay.
Yeah, and no one, if you want to say that's conspiracy theory, prove to me he's dead. Prove to me he's dead. Give me any information. I have a good friend. I think you might have met Brian Lloyd. Maybe it was Len Bracken that met Brian Lloyd, but he was going to write a book about Seth Rich. So was Len Bracken. These are both longtime journalists. John met Brian Lloyd before he died.
Yeah.
And he wanted to write a book about Seth Rich. I said to Brian, where's the evidence that he's dead? Show me the evidence. Show me something. He supposedly, why did the FBI take his phone? 2 phones. Why did the FBI take his laptop? If it's just a botched murder, why confiscate the phones and the laptop? Why 20,000 pages in his FBI file? Why did they only release 86 pages and they were heavily redacted? If he wasn't an informant, right, and if he wasn't trying to set people up inside the DNC, the Bernie people, if he wasn't trying to set the Bernie people up inside the DNC, then what what was he doing offering the emails to everybody wearing shoes in the DNC?
Hmm.
Right. So
He was a walk-in, so to speak.
yeah, they literally pro from Dover. They took him out of the oil fields in Belton Road, brought him in for the Bernie campaign in November. He was there 6 months until Hillary got the nomination, and he was offering those emails and luring them and dangling them to everyone, the Bernie people, and his job was over once Hillary won the election. Then they brought CrowdStrike in to erase everything, and then they went after Trump. Then now the new set of emails, the DNC emails, are going to be to get the Trump people, and it all pivoted around Trump winning the nomination and Hillary winning the nomination, March or May 25th or so. And then that was cleanup on aisle one for the DNC operation. Now let's start the RNC operation. And it all fits together very easily and quickly and cohesively if you explain it that way. But if you go through these gyrations and Rube Goldberg type explanations that CrowdStrike has, you end up with, a headache. So anyway, that's that book.
Well, given and to me, I'm convinced that your construction is accurate, at least, to the level of credibility. Given that information, let's say if the Trump defense team, who should be organizing themselves if they haven't already now, the whole family, the whole network, how can they prepare against this next onslaught of attacks using that same MO? Because they're going to use it again, right? Until someone calls it out, they're going to call the same play, the end around, whatever it is, or off tackle 5 yards in a cloud of dust.
Well, I mean, just in my opinion, Trump's thing is kind of delayed till 2024. I don't think he's interested in a Senate position or a House position. So, I think Jared and Ivanka and whatnot are going to be a lot smarter this next time around. I'm not sure that'll help them, because I think everyone in America found that Trump's naivete in politics pretty refreshing. But given that, they're not going to fall for the lures of, let's do this before we're in power, or here's some emails or any of that. I don't think they're going to fall for those tricks anymore. Will they run is the next question. But I'm kind of more concerned right now. What do we do between now and 2024? We got to live till 2024 first. We got to get through the Schwab era. And so I think the things you've said about art and, creating great media, great literature and so forth is what we got to do.
And, as I'm interested in this whole, the twin rails of modern civilization, going back to early days of colonialism, long distance travel, which is buggery and bastardy. I wonder if you can give me the hard source that gives us the bloodlines or the lineage of Dr. Klaus Schwab. You mentioned in passing his parentage. I think knowing motivations is very important as we develop our own counterculture. Let's say someone wants to do a pop opera featuring a Schwabian type character. I think the bloodlines are really important. So what's the source for there? Is that a Deep Blackberry source that we can't talk about?
No. I mean, I think everybody knows Eugene Schwab. I had Bill Taylor on today. Eugene Schwab is the father, and he was the most model Nazi defense contractor for Hitler. Everybody knows he was the most likely first stop on the diaspora, the rat lines leaving the Bavarian castles for all the fleeing Nazis. But if you really can't go much further back, but if you do the metadata analysis, John's talked about this before, these Prussian Junker disaffected princes that were all amongst the same dueling society. They all had the scar. They were all in the Kaiser's, behest, and they have that kind of noblesse oblige kind of consanguinity amongst them all, as these great Teutonic knights renewed. That's this thing I see in the Nazi high command reborn.
Hmm.
And I do see the Skorzeny and the Schocks and the Speers, and the Hitler's not in this crew. Hitler's a Bavarian bohunk, you know,
Yeah.
from down in Austria. But this crew is the the Mullers and whatnot. Maybe even Muller doesn't even make this crew. It's the Junker club, the
Mhm.
Bilderberg Junkers, that I
Mhm.
think is the Schwabian line here.
These are the Northern Germans, Southern Dutch, part of that whole financial network.
Yeah, John's talked to me about the Junkers before I knew what a Junker was. So
Young hair means young hair, young or young man or young sir, young lord, young sir, young hair, Junker. And the Junkers were the property class, the ones kind of like the Southern plantation owners in America, only instead of Negro slaves, they had white serfs, and the serfs were, just uneducated. They were just the ideal Klaus Schwab citizens, really. Exactly what he wants is a bunch of serfs to push around and to call from time to time when we get too fecund. That's what they want. But Mueller, the reason he wasn't in is because he was an Austrian. He was not a North German at all. And you're absolutely right to distinguish these Prussians who were like the generals with the tradition of military victory going back, to Friedrich der Zweite. And they are real fighters, they're like, let's go out, let's do some war, man. What are you doing today? Oh, I'm going to war. Oh, can I come?
yeah,
They loved it. They absolutely loved it. And they forced that, into the population of both Germany and Austria as they joined them all together and said, no, we're all Germans now. We're all Germans now. And we'll all be happy Germans too. We'll all be happy Nazis. And that was, look at it. It's just like I was saying about what they're doing to us, turning us into kind of, the happy citizens of the empire that don't really know what's going on outside the empire, where we're, using sarin gas to clear pipelines and, all kinds of nasty stuff. We don't need to know about that. Don't put that on the news. Nobody wants to know that stuff. And it's the same thing the Nazis were doing. They were building up their population, to be happy, healthy Aryans. If you were an Aryan in the Nazi realm, then you probably you had a pretty good life. You might have even had a Volkswagen. You had these great highways. They were making sure that the food was in the stores, and everything that was done for the population inside the inner circle of the empire was to keep them happy and under control and doing their work, producing those armament shells, working in the factories, and but also in supervising the slave labor that now was provided, so that they could use their prisoners of war and the people they swept up in the pogroms and the horrible Holocaust to build their war machines. Can we live that? Can we live with that? That's my question. Can I, as an American, live in a country and say, oh God, you know what? I'm retired. I got my Social Security. I'm okay. I can just relax. Why should I worry about the rest of the world? Well, the problem is the rest of the world is suffering very, very badly, and they have a lot of reasons to want to change our attitude. We could be headed for war. We really could be if the crazy Biden and Blinken keep pushing Ukraine and keep pushing that thing. I don't know if the United States will be involved or not, but I'd hate to. If Russia and Ukraine go at it, Ukraine's going to get whooped really bad, real fast, unless the United States helps them. And that's where the pressure is going to come from these knuckleheads like John Kerry and Blinken. They're saying very, very dangerous warlike things, and I wish that there was some way to get all the people that voted for Joe Biden to acknowledge that, hey, yeah, this is on us. We did this. We put Joe Biden in there. Joe Biden, we know he's a puppet. He's a zombie. He does what he's told. He signs what papers they hand him. And how can we get the people that voted for Joe Biden? They're all good people. But they're comfortable. They've got their cars. They've got their house. They've got their job. They've signed their NDAs, so they don't. All the issues have already been decided, and they just need to have. I don't know. How can we live with ourselves, knowing what the United States is doing in the rest of the world on a daily, constant basis? I mean, Afghanistan, for goodness sakes. There's just 1,000 unfortunate, sad episodes that we could talk about, and they all just tell the same story. It's the ugly American. How can we stand? And yet, what's the solution except for Congress? I don't know how to change my congressman. I don't know what to do it. I wish I could. But Congress, that's our system. Our laws come from Congress. If we can't fix Congress, then we're done. And one of the things is they've put these barriers around Congress now. You can't go into Congress anymore. You can't go to talk to your representative. You have to make an appointment, and then you have to go through all kinds of security. And this is wrong. This is completely un-American, and it's got to be ended. We've got to stop this lockdown of our Congress. How can people put up with it, George? Do you have any idea how is it that they're getting away with this? I don't know.
Well, we went up there a lot, task force and I think sometimes this 11-foot fence with the concertina wire was specifically for us because they just didn't like citizen journalists like us saying, hey, where's Imran? I mean, he's making $160,000 a year and he's sending terabytes to the 123 Dropbox. I mean, where is he? And Omar and Bede too, where are they? So I think they wanted to stop those embarrassing questions. But I always take heart, in all these things by your dog, John, Toto, because, you're watching The Wizard of Oz and you're getting totally overwhelmed by, how big the machine is. And man, you got all those huge, 18-foot green monster soldier guys, and you got the moats and the castle and everything's against you.
Let's not forget the flying monkeys, George, your favorite.
Oh, yes. And the flying monkeys. I mean, you're just scared out of your And then Toto comes in and pulls the curtain back on The Wizard of Oz. And all of a sudden, all the power, it's just like, boop. It's just like you pop the bubble. All the power immediately shrivels. And that's what I love about, I try to do it when I write the books. Just explain, how the bioweapon was developed and how it's been cultivated over a 20-year period. And then, hey, put your definition and thing that connects the dots out there versus theirs. And it's like a comedy. Their story is that they're trying to come up with this WHO explanation. And every day that goes by, it's like having a hit comedy show where people are openly, publicly laughing at the WHO explanation of how their source of how the virus came about. And they have to then come up with a new story. They had Lee Harvey fishmonger, that got laughed out. They had Lee Harvey lab coat, that got laughed out. Now they have Lee Harvey ferret monger, that's going to be laughed out. And then we're going to be ending up with the fact that this was a Klaus Schwabian bioweapon, mild as it may be, effected on the world. And now we're going to say, hey, the first step in realizing that you're in an Operation Lockdown is realizing you're in Operation Lockdown is awareness, right? And then we can move to the next level, which is start to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not getting on the train. Hey, wait a minute, I'm going to back off from the virus. I don't need to go to Europe that bad, or I don't need to go to the baseball game that bad. And I'm not saying I'm trying to encourage virus resistance here, but I am trying to say virus judgment, where you go, hey, I'm going to weigh the costs and benefits, and I'm going to wait for testing. You imagine, we're not even doing animal testing. They even did animal testing for thalidomide, right? Even the worst, case drug ever, they did testing for. Okay. This, you'd have to go back to polio. Ed Haslam talks about this in his book with put the monkey viruses. And you'd have to go back to polio, where the last case that we had just straight to human testing. It's unheard of. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things: civil disobedience, and also great art and great culture and writing and documentaries and awareness. Because as Dr. Hamamoto says, there's billions of us and there's very, very few of them.
Yeah.
And I think we can take heart in the fact that, because I'm all about beating down on the edifice to widen the natural fissures there, the cracks in the edifice. And we can take heart in the fact that Bill and Melinda Gates are going to go Splitsville. So I think this relentless hitting on the edifice is widen the cracks. We're going to see these fissures start to widen and widen and widen. And that will be the space for liberty to return. That's always been my because as we know, you can't reform these institutions. They're just have been taken over. And militarily, by force, that's out. But you can, through reportage, by putting the frequencies out there, the resonant frequencies of these giant edifices, create these fissures and make them split up, and the edifice will come down like the walls of Jericho.
I love that.
Right.
I love that.
Okay. Well, I like it too. And let me just take the moment. Okay.
Now, Andy, don't make fun of other people's misfortunes.
I know. You don't know which one of them is going to get the Zika virus, or who's getting the patent on COVID. Which one? You got to be nice to them.
Yeah, I think they're going to split it right down the middle.
All right. Okay. Well, let me then tonight, for the first time, remind or announce that on June the 6th, which is a month from today, today's May the 6th, on June the 6th, it's a Sunday, I'll be having my memorial observation, celebration of my dad's life. We're going to have an event at the Maryland Veterans Memorial Museum, right down here in Southern Maryland. Was over there with Andy a couple days ago and checked out the facilities. It's going to be great. It's a nice place. We're going to have some speakers. I've just, of course, we are very excited to announce that Doug Valentine will speak at the event. Of course, by remote, since he's up in Massachusetts, but that's going to be terrific. I've also just gotten Jim Zobel, who is the archivist down at the MacArthur Memorial Museum, and he's going to do a talk on the cruise in which McDuff and MacArthur were on the same ship, and talk about the interaction that probably went on between those two officers, my father being a lowly second lieutenant, and General MacArthur being the commander-in-chief of the entire Southwest Pacific, both Navy and Army. So that'll be June the 6th, and I'll be putting together an Eventbrite announcement for that in the next few days. George Webb will be speaking, and so will Professor Hamamoto, and I'm very grateful for both of you to join us with that. I'm working on the book. Right now, I'm got my head stuck in trying to figure out J. Edgar Hoover, one of the great figures in my dad's life. So I will be publishing the book before June the 6th. That's all I can tell you. I don't know if it's going to be on June the 5th or maybe give you a little more advance, but I'm looking forward to putting it together, working hard on that. And that's why I've cut down on the shows for the next couple of weeks. I'll just be doing one show a day.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think that'll wrap it up for tonight. George Webb, Professor Hamamoto, and George, congratulations on your new books. I look forward to reading them. I can't keep up with you right now because I'm trying to get my own written,
Sure.
but I've got a half dozen of them on the shelf, and I'll be going through them as soon as I can. I look forward to talking to you again real soon, guys, for next week's trio. And until then, or maybe until the next time we see you, thanks again for being with us. And thanks, Andy and Aaron and Neighborhood News Studio for the great production. Good night, everyone.